When I walked into that restaurant that night, I had no idea it would be the last time I ever looked at my sister the same way. The same sister who used to braid my hair before school. The one who told me secrets under blanket forts, the one who once said I was her favorite surprise in the world. Funny how favorite can turn into outsider when bloodlines are mentioned at the dinner table. It was my mom's birthday dinner, a big family thing. The kind where everyone dresses up, pretends they're happy and hides decades of bitterness under champagne smiles. I had spent the day helping decorate the house, picked out the flowers, even arranged the cake. I was late getting to the restaurant, but only because I stopped to grab Mom's favorite chocolates. The ones with the caramel center she used to give me when I was little. When I arrived, the hostess led me toward the long table in the back. I spotted everyone laughing already halfway through appetizers. My heart swelled. That familiar ache of wanting to belong even for just one night pulsed inside me. I smiled and waved, waiting for my sister to scoot over like she used to. But she didn't. She just looked at me, then at the empty chair beside her, and then she said it. Go find another table. At first, I thought she was joking. The words didn't even sound real. I blinked expecting her to laugh, but her face stayed stone cold. What? I whispered. Her voice cut through the chatter like a knife. You heard me. That seat's for family. The air around me froze, forks stopped clinking, conversations died mid-sentence. Everyone's eyes darted between us, waiting for me to laugh it off, to make it easy, to not make a scene. My mom looked down at her plate, my dad cleared his throat, my other siblings shifted uncomfortably, pretending to check their phones. I tried to steady my voice. I am family. She smirked. You're adopted. Don't make this awkward. I felt something shatter inside me, not just my heart but something deeper. Like a mirror cracking in slow motion, reflecting every memory I had ever shared with her, now distorted beyond repair. I stood there holding Mom's gift bag, my fingers trembling around the ribbon. The waiter came over, trying to help. Mom? We can find you a seat near the back if you'd like. I couldn't even speak. I just nodded, swallowed hard, and walked toward the corner of the restaurant, away from the people who were supposed to be my home. I sat alone at a two-person table near the kitchen doors, listening to bursts of laughter echo from the other side. Every sound from their table, the clinking glasses, the stories, the toasts, was a reminder that I was a guest in a family I once thought was mine. I kept my head down. I didn't want anyone to see the tears building behind my lashes. I told myself to just get through dinner, smile when it was over, and go home. But the thing about silence is that it's loud when your heart is breaking. When the waiter came to take my order, I just asked for water. I couldn't eat. My throat felt like it was closing up. Then, after dessert, something even worse happened. The waiter came back, holding a bill. Not just any bill. The whole bill, miss, he said quietly. Your sister asked me to give this to you. I blinked confused, then looked down. Three's $2.70. I thought it was a mistake. There's no way. He gave me a sympathetic look. She said you offered to cover the dinner as a gift for your mother. My stomach twisted. My heart stopped. I looked over at their table, and there she was, sipping her wine, laughing, acting like nothing happened. I tried to catch her eye, but she just lifted her glass toward me, like it was some kind of cruel toast. That was the moment I realized. She didn't just want to embarrass me. She wanted to erase me. I took a deep breath and handed the waiter my card. My voice cracked when I said, "It's fine. Just put it all on this." He hesitated. "Are you sure?" No, I wasn't, but I wasn't going to let her see me break. When the receipt came back, I signed it with a shaking hand. I kept thinking about how much $3.70 meant to me, not just in money, but in dignity. That was my rent, my groceries, my savings. But more than that, it was the price of my silence that night. When they all got up to leave, my mom hugged me half-heartedly. My dad muttered something about, "next time." My sister didn't even look at me. She just walked past, her perfume sharp, her laughter trailing behind her like smoke. When I finally stepped outside, the rain had started. I stood there, watching their taillights disappear, and I let myself cry. The kind of cry that feels like it's been waiting years to escape. I cried for the little girl who used to believe she belonged. I cried for the teenager who thought love could be earned if she just tried harder. And I cried for the woman who finally realized that some people will never see you as family, no matter how many dinners you pay for. I went home and sat in the dark. My phone buzzed once. A message from my sister. "Thanks for covering. You're a lifesaver." That emoji. That fake kindness. That smug little wink. I stared at it for so long I thought my screen would crack under my glare. That night, something inside me changed. I stopped begging for a seat at tables that were never built for me. I stopped apologizing for existing. I stopped mistaking crumbs for love. The next morning I called my bank. I disputed the charge. I sent screenshots of the message, explained the situation, and by some miracle, the representative on the line said, "You shouldn't have to pay for that. We'll take care of it." It wasn't just the refund that made me cry again. It was the feeling of someone, even a stranger, finally saying, "You don't deserve this." A few days later, my sister called. Her voice was sugar sweet, like she hadn't humiliated me in front of everyone. "Hey," she said. "So apparently the payment got reversed. You need to fix that." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "No." There was silence, then she laughed. "You can't be serious?" "I am," she scoffed. "You're being dramatic, you always are." I smiled to myself. "No. You just never expected me to stop letting you treat me like I'm lucky to be invited." Then I hung up. That silence that followed was the most peaceful sound I'd heard in years. I didn't hear from her for weeks, not even when Mom called me crying saying, "You two need to make up." I told her I wasn't the one who broke anything. I just stopped pretending the cracks weren't there. For the first time, I started to look at my life without the constant filter of their approval. I stopped measuring my worth in how much they accepted me. I stopped trying to fit into a story that was never written for me. I started remembering the moments that actually made me who I am. The nights I stayed up studying so I could earn my scholarship. The friends who showed up when family didn't. The quiet mornings when I made coffee for myself and realized, I like my own company. I am not a mistake and I am not a guest in my own life. A few months later, I ran into my sister at the same restaurant. She was with her husband and a group of friends. She froze when she saw me. I smiled politely, just enough to be civil, and walked right past her to a reserved table. Mine. The manager, who had seen everything that night months before, came over and said softly, "We're glad to have you back." It hit me then. I wasn't scared anymore. I sat down, ordered my meal, and this time I ate in peace. Halfway through dinner, the waiter came over again. "Your bill's been covered," he said, by the lady at the other table. I turned my head and saw an older woman, someone I didn't know, smiling gently at me. She said, "I saw what you went through that night. You didn't deserve it." I don't know why, but tears filled my eyes again. Maybe because kindness from strangers feels like sunlight when you've lived in the shadow of people who were supposed to love you. That night I went home and wrote a letter to myself. I wrote, "You are enough even when they make you feel like a guest. You are not broken, just misplaced. And sometimes, family isn't the one that raises you. It's the one that respects your heart when the others never did." I used to think forgiveness meant letting them back in, but I learned it means letting yourself out. Out of the guilt, the begging, the desperate search for belonging. The truth is, I still love them. Love doesn't just disappear, it just grows quieter. But I no longer mistake love for loyalty. I can love from a distance and still choose myself. Sometimes I still think about that dinner. The clinking glasses, the laughter I wasn't invited to share. And then I remember that I was never excluded because I wasn't worthy. I was excluded because they needed someone to look down on to feel whole. And when I realized that, I stopped feeling small. I started setting my own tables, inviting people who see me, people who listen, people who don't care about DNA or last names, but about the kindness you carry and the truth you speak. The last time my sister texted me, she said, "You've changed." I smiled when I read it. Because for once, she was right, I did change. I stopped letting rejection define me. I stopped needing a seat at a table built on conditions. I stopped believing I had to prove I was worth loving. And the best part, I don't even miss them anymore. Sometimes I think about the bill, $3,270, and I realized that night wasn't about money. It was the cost of my awakening. The moment I understood that peace is worth more than approval. I used to carry the weight of their love like a debt I could never repay. Now, I know that love doesn't come with a bill. Healing didn't come from their apology. It came from me learning that some people can't love you the way you need. And that's okay. You can still love yourself enough to stop waiting for them to learn. I used to pray they'd see me differently. Now I pray I never forget my worth again. The truth is, blood may connect us, but respect is what keeps us together. And once respect is gone, the table isn't home, it's just furniture. That night, when she said, "Go find another table," I did. But what she didn't know is that I found something far better than a seat. I found my self-worth sitting there waiting for me. And now, every time I walk into a restaurant, every time I sit down anywhere, I do it knowing I don't need an invitation. I belong wherever I bring kindness, truth, and strength. Because healing began the night I stopped trying to earn a place where I was never meant to stay. And peace began when I stopped trying to reopen doors that were never meant to lead home. Healing began the day I realized I was never meant to sit at their table. I was meant to build my own. For years, I kept waiting for them to make room for me. Every holiday, every dinner, every invitation that came with a half smile and an afterthought, I told myself maybe this time it would feel different. Maybe this time, they'd pull out a chair for me not because they felt obligated, but because they genuinely wanted me there. I memorized their faces like sacred maps, searching for signs of love that always seemed to disappear when I needed them most. Growing up adopted, I learned early how to read rooms. I could tell who truly saw me and who tolerated me. My sister, the one everyone adored, was always the loudest voice in the room, the sun everyone revolved around. I used to think I was lucky she noticed me at all. She'd ruffle my hair, call me her bonus sister, and I'd glow with pride, not realizing that word, bonus, was her polite way of saying, extra. I built my childhood around her approval. When she laughed, I laughed louder. When she cried, I was the first to comfort her. When she succeeded, I clapped the hardest. I wanted so badly to belong that I became a mirror of everyone around me, reflecting their moods, their expectations, their comfort. I forgot that I had my own light to shine, but love built on fear of abandonment is not love, it's survival, and for so long survival was all I knew. The cracks began small. A missed invitation here, a dismissive comment there. I'd ask, why didn't you tell me about the family trip? And she'd shrug, oh, we figured you were busy. Boozy. That word became my bandage. It was easier to believe they thought I was unavailable than to admit they never thought of me at all. But it's funny how truth has a way of showing up when you least expect it. That dinner, the night she told me to find another table, wasn't the first time I'd been made to feel small. It was just the first time I finally refused to shrink. I sat there in that cold restaurant, watching her laugh like I was invisible, and something in me snapped, but not in anger. It was clarity, the kind that arrives quietly, like the moment you stop knocking on a door that's never going to open. For so long I'd mistaken proximity for belonging. Just because you sit beside people doesn't mean you're included in their hearts. I thought love was earned through endurance. If I kept showing up, kept proving myself, kept paying the emotional bills, eventually they'd see me as one of them. But family built on conditions is not family, it's performance. When I walked out of that restaurant, the air hit me differently. It was sharp but freeing. I remember the rain, soft at first then heavier. For once, I didn't run for cover. I let it soak through my clothes, washing away years of trying too hard. I looked up at the sky and whispered, I get it now. Not in bitterness but in surrender. Because sometimes peace doesn't come when things are fixed. It comes when you stop needing them to be. I went home that night and looked around my tiny apartment. It wasn't much, mismatched furniture, flickering candles, a second-hand couch. But it was mine. For the first time I saw it not as a place I ended up in, but as a place I chose. I made a cup of tea, curled up by the window, and listened to the storm outside. It felt symbolic, like the world was crying with me but also cleansing something in me. That was the night I decided to stop chasing tables that only served rejection. In the weeks that followed I stayed quiet. No dramatic confrontations, no angry messages. Just silence. It scared them more than any words could have. My sister called once, maybe twice, but I didn't answer. There's power in the space between the ring and the decision not to pick up. That space is where you start choosing yourself. I started filling my days with things that made me feel whole again. I went to the farmer's market on Sundays, picked flowers just for me, started journaling every night. I began building small rituals that reminded me I was real, that I existed beyond their dismissal. I even began inviting a few close friends over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just laughter, candles, and the kind of warmth that doesn't ask you to prove you belong. Those dinners became my new table. Each meal I cooked carried pieces of my healing. The first one was simple: pasta, garlic bread, and too much wine. We laughed until we cried, not because anything was perfect, but because it was real. There was no pretense, no hierarchy, no subtle digs about where I came from. Just people, together, choosing to care. It hit me then. Belonging doesn't always come from where you start. Sometimes it's something you build, plate by plate, conversation by conversation, until it surrounds you like home. One night, I sat at that same table alone, looking at the empty chairs after everyone had gone. The candles had burned low, the music had stopped, but my heart was full. I ran my hand along the wood and smiled, realizing that the table I once begged to sit at wasn't even mine to begin with. This one was. Built from my pain, yes, but also from my courage. From every no I'd ever swallowed, every tear I'd ever hidden. It wasn't just about my sister anymore. It was about everything that moment represented. Every person who had made me feel less than. Every situation where I'd been told I was lucky to have a place at all. But I wasn't lucky to be tolerated. I was worthy of being celebrated. That shift changed everything. I started setting boundaries, real ones. Not the kind that you announce for attention, but the quiet kind that protect your peace. I stopped explaining myself to people who were committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped overachieving in relationships that only took. I learned to walk away without announcing my departure. Because peace doesn't need an audience. Sometimes I'd hear my family whisper about me. How I'd become distant. How I'd changed. They said it like it was a bad thing, but they didn't understand that change wasn't rebellion, it was rebirth. I wasn't rejecting them out of spite, I was releasing them out of survival. And in that release, something magical happened. The more I let go, the more room I created for better things. New friendships that felt effortless. Conversations that didn't drain me. Opportunities that reflected the version of me I'd been hiding. I realized that when you stop begging for scraps, the universe starts serving you feasts. I used to think healing would feel like fireworks, loud, bright, undeniable. But it's quieter than that. It's sitting alone in your living room, realizing you're not lonely. It's buying yourself flowers and not waiting for someone else to think you deserve them. It's waking up one morning and noticing that the ache in your chest has softened. There's still a part of me that remembers the sting of that night, her voice, her smirk, the weight of that bill in my hands. But now, when I think about it, I don't feel anger. I feel gratitude. Because that pain was the push I needed to stop living small. Without that moment, I might still be waiting for a seat at someone else's table, unaware that I was capable of building one of my own. It's strange, the things that free you. Sometimes it's not a grand gesture or a big realization. Sometimes it's a cruel sentence said by someone you love, and in that sting, a door opens inside you. Not to the past but to yourself. Now when I host dinners, I make sure everyone feels seen. I look into their eyes when they talk. I laugh loud. I cook too much food on purpose because abundance feels holy to me. I tell people to bring whoever they want because I never want anyone to feel like I once did. Like love has qualifications. This table I built doesn't care where you came from, what your story is, or whether your blood matches mine. The only rule is respect. The only entry requirement is kindness. Sometimes, I still get messages from my sister. We should catch up. Mom misses you. I read them, I breathe, and I put my phone down. Not because I'm bitter, but because I'm not ready to go backward. Healing doesn't mean reopening wounds to prove you've grown. It means protecting the scars that remind you how far you've come. When I think back to the girl standing in that restaurant, holding the bill, feeling unwanted, I want to hug her. I want to tell her that the pain she felt that night wasn't her ending. It was her beginning. The universe wasn't rejecting her, it was redirecting her, away from people who couldn't love her the way she needed, and toward herself. Every time I set a plate on this new table, I think of her. That girl who thought she'd lost everything when all she'd lost was access to people who never deserved her in the first place. And with every meal, every laugh, every quiet moment of peace, I remind myself that sometimes you have to be pushed out of the wrong home to discover the right one inside you. Healing isn't always gentle. It doesn't come wrapped in closure or apologies. Sometimes it arrives in the form of betrayal, so sharp it slices through your illusions, forcing you to see the truth beneath the love you thought you needed. And that truth is this: you were never meant to sit where you had to shrink. You were meant to build where you could finally breathe. So I did. I built it, from rejection, from loneliness, from the ache of being othered. I built something beautiful out of everything they tried to make me ashamed of. And in doing so, I realized that maybe the tables we lose aren't tragedies. Maybe they're invitations, to start again, to rebuild, to finally understand that belonging doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself,